first graders! Welcome back to Science with Mrs. Miller. Today in Lesson 4, we will be talking about the life cycle of plants. You know, plants aren't the only things that have life cycles. Can you think of something else that has a life cycle? You're right, animals do. Think of the life cycle. You've probably learned about the life cycle of a butterfly, right? Let's think about that. How does a butterfly begin its life? Oh, it begins as an egg, right? And then what happens next? The butterfly hatches out of the egg and grows into a caterpillar. And then the caterpillar gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the caterpillar forms a chrysalis around itself. And then out of the chrysalis comes a butterfly. That's right. So all living things have life cycles, and plants are no different. We're going to read this story, Life Cycle of a Sunflower. Listen carefully as we learn about how a sunflower grows from just a tiny little seed to the huge, humongous sunflowers that you might see out in somebody's yard, or if you've ever gone out east on Long Island, there's actually a beautiful sunflower field. But we're going to learn all about the sunflower's life cycle. All right, do you have your listening ears on? If you don't, make sure to put them on now and turn up the volume because we have lots of learning to do. Life Cycle of a Sunflower by Angela Royston. Here are our table of contents. What are sunflowers? Seeds, sprouting, growing, flowering, pollination, new seeds, harvesting, a field of sunflowers, life cycle, fact file, glossary, more books to read, and index. Oh, there's so much to learn in this book. What are sunflowers? Sunflowers are tall plants with large, flat flowers. They come from North America, but now grow in other parts of the world too. There are many kinds of sunflowers, but the sunflower in this book has bright yellow petals. All sunflowers grow from large seeds. Have you ever seen a sunflower seed? Maybe you've even eaten one before. Let's see what it looks like. Seeds. The seed is as big as your thumbnail. That's pretty big. Right now, let me see your thumb. Look at the nail on your thumb. That's about how big a sunflower seed is. It is planted in spring when the soil is warm and damp. Inside is a tiny plant which begins to grow. The roots of the plant push down through the soil. They are covered in tiny hairs which take in water. A green shoot grows upwards. Pretty neat. Okay, so now here we are at 1 to 2 weeks of the sunflower's life. This section is called sprouting. The green shoot is sprouting through the soil. The first leaves open out. They use sunlight, air, and water to make food for the plant. Look at this, it's growing bigger now, right? The plant grows taller and more leaves grow at the tip of the stem. The stem is covered with fine hairs to stop insects from climbing up it. That's a pretty smart adaptation of the plant. Okay, here we are now at 4 to 6 weeks of the sunflower's life. This section is called growing. The leaves grow bigger. Under the ground, the roots grow longer. They take in water and minerals the plant needs to stay alive and keep growing. A large bud forms at the end of the stem. It is protected by pointed green bracts that look like small leaves. You know, when I look at this reminds me of something else. Sort of reminds me of an artichoke. Have you ever seen an artichoke? Looks a little bit like that, right? Okay, now we're at 6 to 8 weeks of the sunflower's life. And this part is called flowering. The bracts unfold and the bud begins to open. Underneath the bracts are lots of yellow petals. Now we're at 9 weeks of the sunflower's life. It says the plant grows taller and taller. The flowers open out. Each flower head is made up of many tiny flowers. All the sunflowers turn to face the sun. As the sun moves across the sky, the flower heads turn to follow it. That's pretty amazing. So I'm just picturing this in my mind. So I guess throughout the day, as the sun moves across the sky, these flowers turn to face the sun. Isn't that incredible? Okay, now we're at 10 weeks. This section's called pollination. Ooh, that's a pretty big fancy word. I wonder what that means. Have you ever heard that word pollination before? Let's read to find out what it means. Each flower head is made up of hundreds of tiny flowers called florets. The tips of these florets are covered with a fine yellow dust called pollen. Pollen. I've heard that before. Thumbs up if you've heard the word pollen before. Yeah, some people are allergic to pollen, right? Like some people during the spring, they sneeze a lot, their eyes get itchy, their nose gets runny because they have a pollen allergy. And pollen sounds like pollination, right? It's like pollination is made up of the word pollen. Now we're getting an idea of what that word pollination means. The flower head is growing bigger. Honeybees see the bright yellow petals and come to the flower head to collect pollen. Are you wondering what those honeybees will do with that pollen? Now we're at 10 weeks. Oh, we're still at 10 weeks. This was 10 weeks also. So 10 weeks continued. As the honeybee crawls across the florets, its body and legs become covered with pollen. The bee flies from one flower head to another. Some of the pollen rubs off its body into the florets. In the center of each floret is a tiny ovule. The ovule becomes a seed when a grain of pollen joins it. So is that what pollination means? Pollination must mean that bees take pollen from one plant and they bring it to another plant, and then they end up dropping some of that pollen into the tiny ovules, and then a seed forms. That's pretty amazing. New seeds. This is at 13 weeks. The florets have no pollen left, but inside each one, a seed is beginning to swell. The petals around the flower head wilt and fall off. The flower heads become darker and turn almost black. Some of them are so heavy they droop from the end of the stems. Now here we are at 14 weeks. The florets wither too. The flower head is now a flat disc of shiny black seeds. Now, at the end of the sunflower's life, it seems like it has all of these seeds. It's a lot, right? I wonder how those seeds will become. I wonder what will happen with those seeds. What do you think might happen? Make a prediction about what might happen with those seeds. Go ahead and just say your prediction into your hands like this. My prediction is that the seeds will... Okay, let's see if your prediction's right. Birds feed on the seeds. The birds drop some of the seeds as they fly away. These may grow into new plants next year. Did you make that prediction? Did you guess that maybe the seeds would drop onto the ground and new plants might grow, new sunflower plants might grow? Pretty cool. Okay, now we're at 16 weeks. This section is called harvesting. The farmer has come to harvest the sunflower seeds. The harvester cuts the plants and shakes out the seeds. The harvester missed this plant. The leaves wither and die. We've heard that word wither a few times now. What does that word wither mean? Wither and die. Well, I guess we could tell from this picture what it means. It's kind of like to drop down, means to wither. Some of the seeds that fall to the ground will grow into new plants next spring. A field of sunflowers. Oh my goodness, this is beautiful. Farmers grow sunflowers for their seeds. Most of the seeds are crushed and made into animal feed or squeezed to make sunflower oil. Some seeds are roasted for us to eat as snacks. Pet guinea pigs like to eat sunflower seeds too. Some seeds are kept to be planted next spring. Raise your hand if you've ever eaten a sunflower seed before. I have too. They're pretty good. Okay, now let's check this out. Here's the life cycle of the sunflower. But you know something? They're missing one very important part. They're missing, I would say step one should be the seed, right? The seed has to, every plant begins from a seed. And then sprouting, the plant continues sprouting, flowering, continues flowering, pollination, and then new seeds. New seeds form, and then that life cycle starts all over again. Wow, that book really taught us a lot about the life cycle of a sunflower. Can you name the parts of a sunflower's life cycle across your fingers? We'll start together. First, a sunflower begins as a seed. Then, the sunflower seed, what does it do? It sprouts. That's right. Then the sunflower grows taller and begins to flower. And the flower becomes bigger. And finally, towards the end of the sunflower's life, the sunflower petals begin to wilt and the seeds form in the middle, and then the seeds drop to the ground. Maybe a bird will drop it to the ground, or it will drop on its own, and the next spring that seed becomes another sunflower. Amazing, isn't it? All right, it's time for us to do a little movement activity. We are going to grow like a sunflower. So would you please stand up and push in your chair? I want you to stand just right behind your chair for this movement activity. All right, so for our movement activity, we're going to pretend to be sunflowers. That's right. So ready? Poof! You're a sunflower. Now turn yourself into a sunflower seed. So we're going to crouch down really, really low. Be sunflower seeds. Now we're going to sprout. Let's grow up through the soil. And we're going to start to flower. Let that flower open up. Let it open up really, really big. And then new seeds will form on the inside and drop down. And let's do it again. Now let's be one of those seeds falling down to the ground. Sprout up through the soil. Flower. Make a new seed. Drop down to the ground. Sprout up through the soil. Flower. And make a new seed. That was fun. All right, I'm going to turn you all back into first grade kids again. Ready? Poof! You're a first grade kid.